What's up? This is Richie from the Very Wild YouTube channel, and today I got a Shimano Sienna 2500 HG. Gonna be ripping it all apart, adding my usual assortment of oil and grease, get it running nice and smooth, so if you're at home trying to take yours apart, you can follow along and hopefully it'll help you out. Let's get into it. All right, Sienna 2500. Cool little budget reel, man. Let's start by taking the handle off. Just gonna turn this counterclockwise to the left here, this little knob. Get this handle off. Get that out of the way. Then we're gonna take this spool off. Just counterclockwise, obviously. Come on, baby. There she is. Dump that off. Now in here, we should be finding some drag washers, or probably one drag washer. There's gonna be a little spring clip in there. And what you wanna do is you wanna take a screwdriver or whatever tool you have, and you're gonna see a break in there, and you wanna just start right on one side of it. Keep your finger over it so it doesn't come flying up at you, and just kind of work your way around and pry it out. Just like that. Underneath here, oops. This is gonna be a pretty basic drag system, but you know, I always build it off to one side, like start here and just build it off. That way I know top to bottom, but it's just probably gonna be one little washer in here. And that's all it is. So I'm just gonna give this little wipe out. This little felt washer. You could probably upgrade this if you wanted to carbon fiber, but I don't know if it's that necessary on this reel. Crazy though, man. This is my PB reel, the old version. I got the black and silver one, the old one as well, and I caught the biggest bass I ever caught on it. So who says that you need expensive gear to catch giants? Maybe I'll link that video at the end of this one for you so you could check it out. It's pretty sick, man. 9.25 pounds. Chunker. Pretty awesome. Been trying to top that fish for a while. Hopefully one of these days I will. All right, so I just wiped off any of the little grease that they had on there. Now this little thing here, there's kind of a more flat side and a more rounded side. You can kind of feel it in your hand. It's very similar, but you're gonna want that flat side down to push on this. So what I'm gonna do here real fast is I'm just gonna take the tiniest little bit of Cal's Universal Reel and Star Drag grease, and I'm gonna just give the tiniest little coating to this washer here. Tiny. You don't want too much. You just want a little, just to prolong the life of the drag washer. It'll soak it up like a sponge. If you get a little too much, you just kind of use a paper towel, wipe your fingers off as you go. That'll work. Throw that back down in there. And then we're going to throw this right back on top, flat side down. And then we'll just throw in our spring clip. And I'll just use my finger here to just kind of push it down. That's all it is. And just make sure the whole thing is pressed down on all sides. Clicked in nice. All right, spool and drag are game over. All right, next up. This should slide right up right here. And she does. It's nice and gentle, but you know, you got to be a little forceful with it. Now in here, it looks to be like there are 1 or 2 thin little buggers. There's just 1? No, 2. Looks like there's 2 little baby washers in there. We're just gonna keep those right where they were. Just good to know what you're dealing with in there. This is pretty, should be, in theory, a pretty basic reel. I never took this one apart before, this newer Sienna. All right, next up, we're gonna have a little screw here and then our nut. And I would think you gotta get this little screw off because that prevents it from turning. It's like a little stopper. So we're just gonna take a little flathead screwdriver here, get a good lock up. Oops. Slips off on you. Take that out. Throw that up in our little magnetized area of the mat. By the way, I'll link everything I'm using in the video description for you. The mat, the tools, the grease, the oil, everything. So if you're in need of some real maintenance tools, it'll be there for you to get. It's really nice to have the right tools for the job, man. You know what I mean? Speaking of, that's the wrong size wrench right there. Hopefully I got one out. That'll do it. Could use this too. Now I can't remember if this is going to be clockwise or counterclockwise. So I got to just be gentle here. I would assume, usually they're all clockwise, but this is counter. I'm used to the bait casters, left-handed bait casting reels, and they're clockwise, but this one you're going counterclockwise on this little Sienna. Pull that bad boy off, and this whole thing should slide right up. Take that whole bail off. And now there's a couple things on this bail that we can oil, and I guess we could do that now, if you like. Just gonna take a little bit of our Lucas reel oil here. And what I like to do is, you know, I don't think on a budget reel like this, they have a roller bearing in here, but I'll treat it like they do. I don't have the schematic up, I don't know for sure, but in any event, what I like to do is, I like to take a little bit of, damn boy, cranking out there, it sounded like a charger. I like to put a tiny little bit of oil right on this seam of each side of the bail. Nothing insane, just a little bit. Sometimes I'll drop tiniest little drop on these screws and it'll kind of sink in behind it. And then I'll just work that back and forth a second. Cool. And then what I usually like to do is, I like to take a tiny little rubber band here on spinning reels that have a little line roller here, and I'll take the tiniest little bit of oil, put it on that line roller, and then I'll take this rubber band and kind of mimic line rolling off it, just like that. But I don't think this one has a roller. It's too budget of a reel, but that's what I do on all my spinning reels, just for reference. Moving on. So now it looks like we got 4 screws here, 3 bigger ones and 1 tiny one. I'm going to leave the tiny one alone because that's going to be responsible for all those little bearings and anti-reverse and all that. So leave that alone, and we're just going to handle these big ones just to get this thing off. Stick with my flathead here. Just gotta be gentle. Make sure you got good pressure on the screws. They're long. Yeah, dude, I actually found this reel recently at Walmart for 11 bucks. Good deal. Usually run around 30, right? I was stoked, man. Sometimes these Walmarts, this time of year, springtime, you got some sick deals. All right, just gonna slide this right up. Put that off to the side there. Sometimes there are washers and whatnot in here. I don't really see any. It's just that roller clutch inner tube. So we'll leave that. All right, we'd be cool. And now technically, we could probably pull this. Can we pull this out? Yeah. So a little twist and pull, and you can pull this pinion gear and your main bearing out. Just like so. Wow, they actually got a little grease on the old pinion gear. I like it. So here's your main bearing. I'm just gonna give it a little wipe off. I'm gonna use a fresh paper towel actually. I don't wanna get any grease on it. Well, I'm impressed, man. Usually these reels are like bone dry, but I actually put a little something on the pinion gear. I like it. I'm just gonna take a Q-tip, a little Q-tip action, just kind of wipe inside the ring of this bearing here. All right, I'm gonna throw it on our bearing tester. These are great to have, man. Whole kit will be linked in the description for you if you want to grab it. Oh, this is a weird side. It doesn't fit on there. That's odd. Just gonna put a little drop on each side. Actually, you know what? Brand new main bearing. I'm gonna fill this thing up and give it a nice drink. Flip it over. A little bit more. Right on. And we will just leave that off to the side somewhere, let that soak. And we're just gonna wipe off this pinion gear. Sometimes on these reels you got a little bit of a washer down on the bottom of it, but I don't see one. Some odd looking grease they use. It's like a lime green, almost. I'm gonna need another little tool for this in the form of a very sophisticated piece of technology. Toothpick. Comes in handy, man. I'm just gonna run it around here and just scoop some of that stuff out. It's nice and gentle, you know, being wood. So it's just a really great little tool to scoop out old grease from your reel parts. We're just gonna add our own. You could also use like a toothbrush if you want. Something like that. I got all this stuff laying around here, man. Cool. Lay that off to the side. Let's keep cruising. Now it looks like we got 3 screws here, and there's another screw on this little, you know, back reeling lever. That's pretty sick. This reel has the back reel feature still. That they're pretty much doing away with that. So let's see here. And then you got one on the bottom here, tiny, 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 tiny. So let's start with that. Is that a flathead or a Phillips? Jeez. This thing's tiny, boy. Yeah. That'll work. All right. All right, let's not lose that. This cover should pull off. You know what? We will keep that in next to that screw so we know it belongs there. Interesting. So usually there should be like a little pin that falls out at this point here. I don't see it yet. Let's get these screws off. Come on, baby. Just got to keep good pressure on it, you know, or it slips off on you. And it's really important to have like the right attachment at all times. All right, so holding the reel like this, or like this to you, I'm just gonna put these screws in that pattern up on this mat here, just in case they're different sizes, so later I know exactly where they went. Sorry if I'm blocking you a little bit, but I gotta see this bad boy. And down at the bottom, those look to be the same size. And we got this one on the top here. Get out of there. All right, hopefully this lets me open it up here and I don't have to mess with this little guy. My hands are real slippery here. All right, we're in. So I'm not messing with any of this over here, man, with that back reeling switch and the spring and stuff. Just leave that alone, unless that thing's broken or something. You know, that really is the only reason you would have to start messing with that. But if we're just trying to, you know, oil and grease this thing up, basic reel maintenance, just leave that thing alone, dude. Leave it alone. All right, so we got a bearing in here. Got our main gear. I'm just gonna pull slightly up on it. A little twist, maybe. Actually, I should probably, let's start by pulling this pin out. There's that pin I was talking about earlier. It's like the little oscillating pin. Pull up on that main gear. Damn, dude. They actually put some serious grease on this thing. How about that? I'm just gonna slide back on this shaft. A little sloppy in there. It's all good. I'm impressed though, man. I'm impressed. Usually they just do not grease these things up, and this thing is pretty much greased to perfection. Shimano's like least expensive reel. Unbelievable. I've opened up way more expensive reels than this and they got nothing. Unbelievable. So this thing, you know, this is just, didn't even need to be taken apart at all. It's like brand new. It's like greased perfect. But we got to show you what you need to do, right? So just for the sake of the video, I'm going to strip all this stuff off and show you where to add your own grease. Got the little oscillating gear in here. I'm just going to grab it by the little, there's like a little knob there. I'm just going to slide up on it. Wipe out any old junk, and there's a lot of it. There's a little bit of a white, I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it, little white bushing in there too. And usually that's a bit of a pain to pop out and put back in, but we can do it if you like. It's gonna have this little fork that sits on this black piece right here. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it, but when we go to push that back in later, see that right there? So you can leave that in if you want, but I guess I'll take it out just to show you, and I'll clean it up a little bit. But it's got like a little fork, and that's gonna line up with that little black piece over there. It's like a little, just like a point in like the wall of the reel, and that little fork right there sticks perfect right into it. Just clean that up. Get all the rest of this junk out of there. Make sure you don't leave any Q-tip fibers behind. All right, good enough. Don't need to go absolutely insane. Now we're just gonna clean off all these individual parts. I'm gonna throw this little piece back in real fast. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it, but you basically just want it to pop down in here, and this little piece, little fork piece, has to sit perfect. I need tweezers for this job. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see this. Actually, we'll go into the top. No, we won't. Come on, boy. Slippery little sucker. There's no way you're gonna see this, I'm sorry. I'm trying. But basically you gotta just line that fork up, and then you just slowly push that thing down in there. There you go. Whew. Pain in the butt, that little guy. Swipe off all these parts. Man, this main gear is just really juiced. Look at this thing. Now you got a couple little washers right here, and you can just leave them on. It looks like there's two. They're paper thin, and they're sitting on the outside of the main gear here. You don't want to bend them, so just be mindful of them. Jeez, I don't have to do a darn thing to this. It is just so greased. Man, this is actually going to be a pain in the butt to clean everything off. Maybe I will take these off just to show you. One. That one's a little stuck. Yeah, that one don't want to come off. So I'm just going to leave it on there. Get a little wipe. So I'm probably just going to leave some of this on. I'm not going to go absolutely crazy and wipe off every little bit of it. But just to show you what you need to do here, we're going to grab our paintbrush, a little bit of blue grease, or whatever grease you have. I prefer this pen reel grease. Be linked in the description for you. And we're just going to hit these teeth. You can just kind of swirl around a little bit. Cool. A little bit on these teeth here. Nothing crazy, you don't want to overload it. It's cool. And then we're going to add a little bit to that oscillating gear. Actually, let's get rid of this bearing first. Just going to pull this out with a little bearing remover. Just like that. Geez, that's so crazy. All the sizes of these bearings on this reel don't fit on my bearing tester. Just looking to see if there's any grease on there. You don't want grease on the bearings. And we're just going to drop a little healthy amount of oil on there. Both sides, I'll just put a tiny little drop. And we'll fire that bad boy back in. Just like that. Snap it back in. And then, since we are in bearing mode, we'll take the one off the other side here. And it's not necessary to pull these things out. You could just drop your oil right on them. But just for the sake of the video, pulling them out. A little wipe off. I don't know, fit either. Couple drops. Work it in. Right on. We're just gonna fire that bad boy back in, just like that. All right, all our bearings are taken care of. Now, where were we? So we're gonna take a little bit of grease. I'm just gonna put a little bit, oops, right around, slippery now, boy. Right around this wheel down here, tiny little bit. And then we're going to put a little bit on this gear here. Nice quick way to do it is just give it a couple taps and then just run your finger over it and get that grease to sit down in those teeth. I'm just going to coat this whole thing, really. Nothing sloppy or crazy. Cool. All right, now we're gonna just fire this thing back in. Hands are so slippery, man. Right onto that little post down there. See that? Just sits there, and then you just make sure you push it down all the way. All right, one more gear to grease. It's gonna be our pinion. And we're just gonna throw a little bit on these teeth. Just like so. Don't go too nuts, you know, but any extra you just kind of wipe back off the brush. All right, good enough. Good enough. All right, let's get this tiny little washer back on this thing. Oops. Be gentle with it because they are paper thin, man. Paper thin. Get that sat down. All right, let's throw this thing back together. I'm actually gonna add just a tiny little bit of grease onto this little pin here. And now on this thing, usually there is a more of a pointed side, and that's the side that's gonna be going in. Like a more rounded, yeah. Flat on this side, pointed on that side, so pointy end's gonna be pushed into the reel. All right, next up here, we got the shaft and the slide down here. We're gonna just hit that real fast with a little bit of something, something. Right down in that groove there. where it's going to be sliding back and forth. And now while you got this out, it's always good to check to make sure that this screw right here is tight. If it's not, it will cause some wobble in your reel. A lot of times I'll put Loctite on that, but you know, most of the time they're pretty secure. You just want to check it out. Make sure you got the right. Yeah, that's nice and tight, man. Just checking. Always want to check that out. All right, first things first, let's set this shaft up, and now we're gonna have to be real careful here, and we're gonna try to get through that white bushing up there without knocking it off. And sometimes that is tricky. Yeah. Just kind of using the tweezers here to keep pressure on it as I pull up. Notice I'm just going to rotate around a little bit because that slide has to sit right on that little nut in there. Well, it's going to fall off until we get that pin on, but you just want to sit that right in there. Then we're going to take our pin with the pointy side first, go right through this area here, and just send it all the way up into that hole there. And that'll lock that in place for you. And we got our main gear. We're gonna just slowly, actually, you know what, we could probably, well, let's just sit that in there. Just gonna go right down to that bearing there. And just a little bit of twist and pop. Then we got our main bearing and our pinion gear. Just going to slide that back onto the top of the pinion, just like that. And then we're going to just slide it right down here, right down the shaft with a gentle little twist so it sits into this main gear. And you might have to play around with it a minute, but you'll feel it. There it is right there. And then you just push this bearing, make sure it's all the way seated down nice and flush, and then that is ready to roll. And you can see how this all works together. When you crank this handle, well, I'll grab it from up here because it's slippery. When that handle turns, catches the pinion gear, catches the main gear, catches that oscillating gear, and it slides that shaft up and down that pin there. And that's how it all works. Pretty cool. Pretty cool, right? All right, so we're ready to roll. Everything's in there nice. I'm just gonna turn this so the shaft goes down, just like that. Everything's greased, everything's oiled. Hit all the bearings, hit all the gears. We're ready to rock and roll, man. Let's get this cover back on. My hands are so slippery right now. It's friggin' nuts. I'm just gonna add a little bit of pressure. Make sure everything snaps back into place just like that. I gotta wipe my hands off, man. This is getting out of control. Okay, let's get these screws back in. Now, they're all the same size, so It's all good, but I did put them in the order in which I found them just to be safe. Sometimes you get one that's a little shorter, a little longer. I'm not going to tighten it completely yet until I get all 3 of them in. And now also, I don't know if this can fly out on you, but just be aware of that slide. I don't see where it can come out of. But usually that slide, that big pin that we put in there can come out on some of these reels if you're holding it upside down. I don't know if this one can. Come on, baby. These screws are a pain sometimes on these reels. All right, that one's all tight. That one's all tight. And that one's all tight. Cool. What's next? Now this is probably going to be a little tricky here. Actually, you know what? Let's get this cover back on first and foremost. Everything is so slippery, dude. Set that on there like that. Now this is not going to be fun. This tiny little screw here. I'll tell you that. See if I can get this thing to balance. It's going to be nuts. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of a flathead, a little bit of a Phillips head. Can I get away with this size? Come on, dude. I don't have time for this. And I'm going to dip this Phillips head in a little bit of grease. This is magnetized, but none of these screws ever work with it on these reels for some reason. They just don't make them out of that material. So I'm going to stick the grease right there. And that way it sticks that little bugger for you, which just kind of helps. Come on. Ah, so close. Just have patience, man. Bear with me here. And you're gonna need some patience for yourself too, because this thing is tiny. Tiny. I think I got it now. Oh man, what a pain that little thing is. So you gotta do what you gotta do, man. You can use that little grease trick, maybe that'll help you out. Tweezers, anything you can figure out how to get that little bugger to sit back in there, and that's what you gotta do. Now we can move on to this. And there's gonna be two, what's the word, like forks almost, kind of pins, whatever you wanna call them there, pegs. And they're gonna line up with these two holes right here. So as you come down, it's gonna take a little bit of finesse to try to line those up and just kind of get an idea of it in your head where this lines up. There's another indentation here for where that spring area is. Just kind of get a little mental picture, kind of line it up. And it's gonna take a little bit of finesse. And that roller clutch inner tube will pop out on you a little bit sometimes. I'd really like to get that thing back down in there as soon as possible, actually. It's just going to take a little bit of finagling to get this thing to sit on there. And you just want to make sure that roller clutch gets pushed down. Now once those pins are in those holes, you can tell it's snapped down, it's all flush, and it won't move on you. So then you can go ahead and put those screws in. That could be a pain in the butt too. I got a little lucky, I think, with that one. Sometimes when you're trying to line those up, it's not that easy. So if it's giving you problems, don't force anything. Just be patient, and you'll get it. So I'm just kind of tightening a little bit on each one at once. Then once I get it down further, I'll tighten them all the way. Tight is tight. Tight is tight. And tight is tight. All right, cool. Woo, boy. These little spinning reels hurt your eyes, man. So many tiny little parts to focus on. All right, we're just about there, man. Now let's throw this thing back together on top, throw this bail down. Remember, we put a tiny little grease right there. So if you didn't do that, you can. Stick that bugger on, and then we got our nut. You just want to make sure you line those threads up. Take your time. And that's going to be tightening clockwise. You don't want to over tighten this thing, man, you know, just tight is tight. Just like that. I'm gonna slide this piece back on. Remember, you got those two little washers in there, and these are kind of keyed with the shape. So you just want to slide those all the way down. You want these to just kind of wiggle and finesse your way past these screw areas here, and you're just gonna have to finagle it down a little bit, and then you just kind of push it, sit it all the way down. All right. Next up, we got our spool. Throw that on. And also, you know, you can take the tiniest, and just throw one little baby coating right around there, just like that. Just to keep some water out, stuff like that. Tiny little dab right here. Nothing crazy. Let's get that on. These Sienna drags, though, they sound pretty sick, man. I still have the sound of catching my PB and how loud the drag was when that thing was just screaming. It was pretty sick. Now, obviously, if you're having any problems with your bail system, you know you're gonna break into this stuff. But just, you know, basic reel maintenance here. You're just oiling everything up, greasing everything up, cleaning everything up. You know, everything's working fine. It's a little bit of a different story when something's broken and you got to get in there and figure it out. But just your basic reel maintenance here, it's just about game over. Slide that handle back in, and now if you want this tiny little area here, you can put the tiniest little bit of grease just to keep any water out of there. keep it from rusting over time or whatever. But it's usually so tight in there. Once this handle's closed, it's really hard to get stuff in there. It's just water, you know how that goes. Water and sand, that stuff finds its way anywhere. Throw this, tighten her up. Man, my hands are slippery, boy. Tight is tight. And it's just about game over, kids. Wait a minute. Wait a minute, my friend. We done forgot something, didn't we? Real fast. What'd I forget? Can you tell what I forgot? It's a tiny little piece. Tiny, tiny, tiny. Unbelievable. What'd I forget? That's how easy it is to forget something. What'd I forget? That tiny little screw there. Most important part on the reel? No, not really. Do you even need it? Probably not. But don't forget that tiny little screw there so that nut can't go in the opposite direction. And we're just gonna take a tiny little Phillips head. That's funny, dude. Totally forgot about this little bugger. A little bit of grease, just to get stick. That's funny. Tiny, 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 tiny little guy. And we're just gonna send it right down next to that. That bolt there. Right there. That's funny, dude. It's very rare I do that and forget something. But that thing is tiny. Tiny boy. I can't believe I forgot about that. Crank this thing down, and now it's absolutely game over. Slowly start working this in a little bit. Don't go too fast at first, but you just want to slowly go and let all that work in. And there's going to be some oil shooting around at you from this bail. Just give it a few minutes. That sounds cool. One more little thing I like to do here is just drop a tiny little bit of oil right where the handle meets the knob there. Use gravity just to let it fall in, make that nice and smooth. Looking pretty good. Starting to feel even smoother. It's crazy. 10, 15, 20 seconds goes by. All that stuff starts to work its way in. And you can literally feel it start getting smoother in your hand. Nice. It's right by the camera, so it might sound loud to you, but it feels really smooth. Nice. All right, so there you have it. That is taking apart and tuning up the Shimano Sienna 2500 HG. Very cool. Not too complicated, man. Pretty simple. Just take your time. Hit all the bearings, hit all the gears. And yeah, don't force anything, man. Anything gives you any resistance or problems, you just calm down, take a breath, you know, and take your time with it. Don't forget those little parts, little screws, you know, you just kind of pay attention. But this is a pretty basic reel, man. If you ever tried to take apart like a Shimano Vanford or something like that, that thing makes you lose your mind. But this is sweet, man. Nice and easy and pretty basic and a great little budget reel, man. I will link that video where I caught a 9.25 on the old version of this reel. Oh man, I gotta try to top that fish. I'm gonna have to go use this reel very soon. Maybe it's my good luck reel, the Siennas. Very, very cool. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like, and if you're into this sort of thing, don't forget to hit subscribe. We put a new video out every single week. And definitely check out our Shimano reels playlist we have up on the channel. I got a lot more Shimano reels. I'm always ripping them apart, so odds are you're gonna find a few more reels that you might be interested in working on. So I hope those videos help you out as well. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Later. If you want to see more videos just like this one, be sure to check out the rest of the Where We Wild YouTube channel, where we post a brand new video every week. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you get notified whenever we post a new adventure. Thanks for watching. See ya.